Bigger than capes.
Give me some outside.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it, and then I watched it.
Dry.
Hello, welcome to Bigger Than Capes. I'm Zach, and I am joined by Angela. Hey, Angela, how you doing?
Hello, I'm doing all right.
Splendid. This is our first official film club of the new year and the new podcast and the new everything.
The new everything. It's an old film, but everything else is new.
And it's not even that old a film. It feels old. I think is key here. So I'm gonna get straight to it this week. So in a sequel to several previous podcasts, we're going to be talking about Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer.
We are indeed.
For better or for worse, we shall see. And it came out in 2007, directed by Tim Story and written by Don Payne, Mark Frost, John Turman, Mark Frost again, according to IMDb. And the characters were created, of course, by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And I know what you're thinking. Bigger Than Capes has immediately gone straight to capes.
Yes.
But unpopular capes, and that's what
we're going for.
That's what the people want, I assume.
Yeah, they want terrible films and adaptations of popular characters.
I mean, apparently that's what we're drawn to, so
it is.
I have to assume that we're correct.
Yeah.
In a previous life, we quite enjoyed the first Fantastic Four.
We did, yes.
So I'm curious to see how you feel about the sequel.
It is both better and worse.
I think that is entirely fair, and I'm curious if we think in the same ways.
Yes.
So I believe you've got some pre-prepared Fantastic Four fantastic facts, as I'm going to be trademarking them.
Yes, I do. To give people a sense of how poorly these films did. So
Sorry.
Yeah, the first Fantastic Four film, which we quite enjoyed, did okay. So it had a budget of I like how it's estimated on Wikipedia as between $87.5 and $100 million, because what's $12.5 million between friends? The box office, however, was $333.5 million. Doesn't sound a lot now when we're used to comic book films making, at least $1 billion. But this is, the mid-2000s. It was a different time, a different era. So it made its money back, clearly. It sadly only had an approval rating of 27% on Rotten Tomatoes, which...
Not incredible.
Not great, and poor compared to other comic book films of the time. The average rating came out at 4.51 out of 10, which makes me sad. It's at least a 5. So it made money, so they thought, we'll make another one. So we're gonna do Rise of the Silver Surfer, because of course the Silver Surfer, big part of Fantastic Four lore in the comics. So they upped the budget to between $120 and $130 million. Again, what's $10 million between friends? However, the box office was only $301.9 million. How sad. And although it grossed more on its opening weekend compared to the first one, it dropped like a stone after that, basically. So that one has an approval rating, or the one we're going to discuss has an approval rating of 37% on Rotten Tomatoes, but the average rating is 4.78 out of 10, which is probably closer to how I feel. So yeah, that is, in a nutshell, the financial background to these films. They got all the original cast back for the sequel, and some new people.
And some new people.
And some new people who no doubt we will be discussing how we feel about these new people and what they bring or do not bring to this. But all your favourites are back. You've got Ioan Gruffudd as Reed Richards / Mr. Fantastic. You've got Jessica Alba back as Sue Storm / Invisible Woman. You've got Chris Evans back as Johnny Storm / The Human Torch. And you've got Michael Chiklis back as Ben Grimm / The Thing. And also Victor's back. But we'll get into that when he appears. Julian McMahon's back, which is nice. We'll talk about him slightly later on.
Oh, yes, we will.
Yeah, I don't really care about anyone else, so I've not written any other names. Oh, yeah, no. Kerry Washington's back as Alicia, which is nice.
Yes. Also, Silver Surfer is some of my favourite odd casting.
It's brilliant, yes.
So, the body of Surfer
yes,
is Doug Jones, who was also Abe Sapien in Hellboy, and most recently is Saru in Star Trek Discovery.
Yes, and the Fishman in The Shape of Water.
Yes, so if you need a tall, thin man who's okay being covered in whatever kind of prosthetics you've got,
Doug Jones.
Doug Jones is your man. And he is quite a good actor.
He is. I like him.
But in spite of... Yeah, I really like him too. I think... Obviously, he's just allowed to do his own voice and be his own person in Discovery.
Which is so nice.
Yeah, but I can't remember. I thought when he's Abe Sapien in Hellboy, someone else voices him.
Yes, David Hyde Pierce, who incidentally was in Frasier with Kelsey Grammer. There's a link for you.
That's
so in the first Hellboy, he is dubbed by David Hyde Pierce, but he is allowed to use his own voice in the sequel, I believe.
Okay, that might be why I was struggling to fact check that the other day.
Yeah.
And in this, he is voiced by Lawrence Fishburne.
Yes, Morpheus, voices the Silver Surfer.
Which I think is made weird by the fact that he doesn't speak enough to justify it.
No.
I think, in my opinion, it's like, okay, Lawrence Fishburne's cool, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if he's necessary for the additional voice.
No, it's not like a James Earl Jones dubbing David Prowse Darth Vader situation.
No.
It's not like that. It's not like Doug Jones has a voice that doesn't fit with the character. I'm sure, having seen him actually do characters where he voices them himself, he has a voice that could have been used for the character. But he doesn't speak that much, so it does seem really weird that, hey, Lawrence Fishburne, he's cool. He's done The Matrix. We'll have him. Maybe.
Yeah, and it's weird because I can't think of any other high-profile Lawrence Fishburne films from this time other than the three Matrices. The Matrices?
The Matrices.
as they're more commonly known.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's just an odd...
It's a very odd choice.
Odd choice, and a choice that I don't think needed to be made, but maybe that's just me.
No.
So plot.
Well, is there one? I mean, I've watched this film. I'm still not sure there is one. It's a series of things that happen, and the loose thread sort of running through it is, hey, Reed and Sue are getting married, y'all.
Yeah.
That's it, really. Oh, also mystery, Galactus, space cloud stuff. But that feels more like the B plot. Like the entire film is hung around. So Reed and Sue, they're trying to get married, and stuff happens. But they're going to get married, and how's that going to impact them? How's that going to impact Johnny and Ben?
Yeah.
That's the plot, and then things happen around their desperation and failure to get married.
This is very true, and okay, I can't remember how long the first one was, but this is only an hour and a half. I think
88 minutes, including credits. Yeah, it's very short.
And I feel like there's at least another 15, 20 minutes on the first one, maybe.
Yeah, there is. It's longer.
So I think what's interesting is, the main plot of the film is incredibly dull.
Yeah, because I don't care, Reed and Sue. Get married, don't get married, have kids, don't have kids, possibly don't have kids, considering how that turns out in the comics. But still, I don't care.
But, so whilst that is essentially the main plot, the main plot of this film is they're getting married, hopefully, and what does that mean for Ben and Johnny? And this kind of overarching plot of Sue and Reed are really just the worst people.
Genuinely, yes.
So they're kind of perfect for each other, but
awful. They're awful. Like, I mean, I will say what I did like was it pushes Johnny and Ben together a bit more, because that's what we missed from the first one, was that relationship.
Yeah, it is.
I did love how, like, at one point Johnny's like, well, if they go off, what are we going to be, the dynamic duo? And I'm like, no, you're going to be Marvel 2-in-1, Johnny, and it's going to be good. But but I like that, because that's always, out of the Fantastic Four, that is my favourite relationship, is between those two characters. So on the plus side, we get those two. But halfway through, I'm like, dudes, just ditch him. Ditch him. Just ditch Reed and Sue.
Get out, start your own plot.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter that the world's going to end.
Yeah, go on.
Because that's the subplot here, the B plot,
Oh,
that
yeah,
the world is going to end.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter, because what's going to happen to the Fantastic Four?
Will Reed and Sue get married? That's the thing. That Will Reed and Sue get married is given more importance in the plot than, oh my God, is the world going to end? It's, yeah.
And it's quite frustrating. I'm not going to. So we open with the Silver Surfer's arrival on Earth. Of course, we don't get to see the Silver Surfer. He's just a kind of fast-moving.
He's a silver blur. Yes.
Yeah, that bounces around the Earth and causes weird events. So he makes it snow in Egypt, and he makes it cold in Japan, which is not that strange an occurrence, actually.
That was a bit weird, because it was like, but the way the sea freezes is it literally freezes like just
mid-wave.
I mean, I think that was like, you could have, if you'd have had it like ice, that wouldn't have been an abnormal occurrence, particularly because there's a snowy mountain in the background. But it would have made a little bit more sense if maybe he's just, increasing coldness everywhere. And that would have made more sense, because later on the newsreader says, scientists don't think climate change is involved in these strange events, which would make more sense if everything was going colder, but it's completely random. It's just all kinds of weird stuff happens. He turns the lights out in Los Angeles.
Yes, and this is what bothers me. It's like, it's suggested that he's manipulating, like, weather and stuff, but he just makes two places a bit cold, turns the lights out somewhere, and then interrupts a wedding because he realizes he's being scanned and he's not having any of that.
Yeah.
Somehow.
But it's like, where was he in the interim period? So there's all this stuff happens and then he just disappears. Because we have to focus on the important things. Like, why are the Fantastic Four travelling in coach?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, that's funny. I think we all agree that seeing the Fantastic Four getting on a plane is just damn hilarious. I mean
that's what I want from a superhero film, is to see how they cope, having to, store their luggage in overhead compartments and squeeze into gaps in seats that are clearly too small.
And here's the thing, I watched this film like a day ago.
So did I, yes.
And I can't remember for the life of me where they're coming back from or why it matters.
No, it's like they're in an airport because this is the thing, it's like they've completely upgraded the Baxter building, like, totally. Considering this is a guy who couldn't pay the bills last film.
Now it's a new building also.
Now it's a new building, it's all fancy, it's all shiny. Why don't you have a private plane? I mean, we know why, because the Fantastic Car's coming later on. Spoilers.
Also, you can't have like a helipad or anything, because they've had to turn the ceiling into a giant Fantastic Four logo skylight. And obviously that's more important than like flights.
But it's like if they were going to save the world, like if they had travelled somewhere to save the world and they were travelling back, how does that work? Because you've appeared somewhere, you're getting on a plane back. I really hope they weren't in a rush to have the world saved wherever you were, because you'd have had to, sorry, this flight's fully booked, you're going to have to wait for the next one. Doesn't make any sense.
But this is another thing, and it's something that we would see in the MCU, for instance. We would see a kind of hint of what's happened between films.
Yeah.
But there is no indication that anything has happened since the previous Fantastic Four film. There's no, like, reference to Mole Man or the Negative Zone or the Skrulls. I mean, okay, there are Skrull references later on, but not in a obvious way. More in a Skrull Easter egg, I guess.
Yes.
And I'm not even sure if that's intentional.
I don't know if it is, to be honest.
So there's a few things where there's just kind of black holes of, but what have you guys done for 2 years? I know what I did between 2005 and 2007, but what did the Fantastic Four do?
Well, Johnny grew his hair out a bit. Ben got a custom jacket. Sue got a really bad wig and terrible contacts. And Reed just continued to be an ass. And apparently, it's like because it's on the news, like the Fantastic Four, the wedding of the millennium, whatever. Century, decade. Yeah, I mean, you're only in 2007, people. It's a long century to go. It's going to be the wedding of the century. We've only had 7 years. But yeah, it's like that's the news, not, hey, the Fantastic Four just saved 20 children from a burning building.
Yeah.
And also, they're getting married next week. Like, that was the perfect time to put something in there. Like, oh, yeah, they're getting married, but, you know, they've done this, that, and the other.
Yeah, no. It's like we get the marriage of the century, fresh off a fight with Mole Man. It'd be like, oh, cool, exits, right.
Yeah.
With you, giant monsters underground. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's just like, you know, these guys, they did that thing on a bridge once. They're getting married now.
Yeah. I mean, they did have an entire fan club after saving those people on a bridge with an accident that they kind of half caused themselves. So
minor detail, Angela. Minor detail.
So, yeah, it's just ridiculous. And I just want to mention it here. There is that bit where instead of signing autographs, Ben, like, rubs his fingers together. And just, you know, children have handkerchiefs. And I'm like, that's disgusting. That's like saying to children, here's my old toenail clippings. Here's a bit of dried skin I peeled off. Here you go, children. And it's just rock dust. And I'm assuming those kids save it and sell it on eBay later.
In another subplot that never really plays out.
Yeah, I'd have rather seen that than, oh no, Sue has not decided the placement of the flowers on the tables for the wedding.
All right, so there's so much to get at and so little time in my life. Okay, so there are some interesting things here. So with the Silver Surfer flying around and it being covered on the news reports, we see stuff like it being referred to as, you know, people are saying that it's not global warming and it could be a sign of the hand of God.
Yes.
Which I'm assuming it's intentionally referential to the fact that apparently Stan Lee's brief that he gave Jack Kirby for the introduction of Galactus and the Silver Surfer was the Fantastic Four meet God.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it's a knowing reference to such things. But maybe it's not. That's the kind of film this is. Maybe it's not.
That's the problem, is that things you think, oh yeah, that's a reference, could equally not be a reference. It could just be a lazy coincidence, because that's how well this film is plotted, i.e. that poorly.
Yeah, and there are so many subplots that start and don't resolve. I don't know how you feel about that.
There are a lot, yeah.
And there's things like, okay, so before the Silver Surfer interrupts the wedding by by destroying the scanner that Reed has made, despite saying he won't make it, We catch up with Johnny convincing Reed to have a bachelor party because he's getting married, and that's what the guys have to do. And they go to a bar and dance a bit, and Reed bores people with information about the Big Bang that's not exactly an indicator that Reed Richards is smart.
That annoyed me so much because it's just like, so I think one of the women, you know, the gorgeous women who's just, you know, hanging over his every word for some reason. And then he's like, yes, Candy. And I'm like, great. So you named your female character there who's like, oh, the Big Bang, so excited. You named her Candy. Really, film? Really? Thanks for that.
I can't help but think that the whole bachelor party sequence is just loaded with kind of cliche sexist
awfulness. Yes.
Yeah, just all around awfulness from the girls Johnny is brought to dance for them to dance with and explain the Big Bang to, through to Sue turns up obviously, and her reaction is like such a kind of cliche outraged girlfriend.
God, yeah.
For her then to like a scene later be like, I don't care. I know you, Reed. I know you wouldn't do anything, you know, anything. And, you know, my bachelorette party was way wilder. And it's like, well, why were you so outraged literally 30 seconds ago? We also see, so Sue turns up at the bachelor party with General Hager, who is Andre Bronner?
Yeah.
Of Brooklyn Nine-Nine fame, who basically, and no offense to him because I really like him as an actor, he's tremendous at playing one character.
Yes, he is.
He plays he's early Captain Holt in this. He plays the same role in The Mist with like the Tom Jane fronted adaptation. He plays the same pissed off old man in everything, and he looks the same all the time, so I have no gauge on how old he is.
Well, this is it, because I was like, wow, this is 13 years ago. He doesn't look any different now.
Yeah.
Did he just age to look really old really quick, and then he's not aged since?
This was my question, like, did he always have grey hair? Is that what this is?
He was born with grey hair.
And don't get me wrong, I really like him, but I don't think he benefits from being in this film.
This film would work perfectly fine if he wasn't in it.
Yeah, he basically hires Reed to create a scanner to find the Silver Surfer, although they don't know he's a Silver Surfer just yet.
Yeah.
But they will real soon when Reed names him that after seeing a single photo. Oh, no, not after seeing a single photo. After Johnny explains what he is. Yeah. So he builds this. He says, no, I'm not going to build this scanner. We're getting married, and that's more important. And, you know, General Hager's outraged, and Sue's all like, oh, Reed, you.
Oh, yeah.
And then, obviously, you know, he builds the scanner anyway on his wedding day, no less, which is then interrupted by the Surfer, who Johnny chases after, has one of my favourite scenes where he doesn't want to because he's in a tux. And
he's like, this is Dolce. I don't want to set it on fire.
And in the process gets carried into space and has his powers screwed with. Not turned off, they're still there. And gets dropped from space and manages to save himself by flaming on for about 10 seconds before smashing into the ground, and that's in the desert, no less. It's
like those Halo jumps that they covered in, I think it was GoldenEye, James Bond, where they talk about, you know, you know, release your chute at the last second and hope you don't break all your bones. And it's kind of like that. It's the equivalent. He has a little bit of flame at the last second and doesn't break all his bones.
And, you know, he lands in sand, which we know is notoriously soft if you land in it from
A great height, yeah. If you landed
That's
it from
right.
thousands of miles above the, I mean, yeah. What gets me is that I think that they leave Earth's atmosphere before he drops it back,
Definitely.
and I'm like, he's dead. It's just
Yeah,
dead.
it's not that he's cold. He's dead.
He's dead.
You've killed Johnny Storm, and the rest of
Yeah.
this film is, incidental at this point because
Pretty much, he's gone. The idea that I know he's got, he is literally human fire, but still, I don't think that gives you the ability to survive in space. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I so wish Stanley had gone with a different way with the name and called him Human Fire.
yeah,
I
yeah.
just before I forget about this, I'm going to introduce my first fantastic fashion segment for this,
Well, hey,
which is that at the bachelor party, which we skirted over earlier,
it's
Johnny
awful.
is dressed as David Tennant as
Yes.
Doctor Who.
Yes, he is.
He's got the open collared purple shirt, the pinstripe suit, the kind of flicky up hair because he's
Yeah,
grown his hair out between films. He looks all right.
he does. Yeah, yeah. If Chris Evans ever wanted to cosplay as David Tennant's Doctor, I think he can pull it off. It works.
I do wonder if the costume people knew this or it was just.
I like to think the costume people were that geeky that they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna do this."
I would hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like a small ask, but who knows? So back to the plot. After
What
being
plot?
dropped, being dropped to his death, Johnny then explains what happened and that he fought a silver man on a surfboard. And of course,
Yeah.
then Reed goes, "So this silver surfer." It's like, "Good job, Reed. Thank you." And basically from there, the plot becomes Johnny's powers don't work for about 5 minutes. That's the plot.
Yeah, it's very brief.
He swaps powers with Sue by accident, so he turns invisible and she's on fire.
Which is just an excuse to get Jessica Alba naked.
Because
Again.
if we've learned anything from the Fantastic Four films, it is that all roads lead to Jessica Alba naked.
There has to be a scene there. And I mean, this is the thing, like, we've had her in her underwear before, but no, this time, completely naked, guys. Completely naked.
Because clothes burn, even
Yeah.
though surely she should be in the little invisible outfit thing that they all wear under their clothes all the time.
Yeah, the only one that we see Johnny wears it underneath, because obviously when he burned off his expensive suit, he wasn't naked. And we see Reed with it on, I think, when he's doing the sensor thing, when he should be wearing, getting ready for the wedding.
Yeah.
I assume Ben just wears it because... But the only one that we don't have any honest proof is Sue. Isn't that strange? Really weird. Can't think why.
It
What
is
the denominating factor is there?
It's such a weird little detail, isn't it?
Isn't
That
it?
somehow, despite knowing that should she suddenly burst into flame,
Yeah.
or if she needs to turn invisible, she'll have to take all of her clothes off,
Yeah.
wherever she is.
Yeah.
I referred to the decision to find a way to get Jessica Alba in her underwear in the previous one as a very 2005 decision. I maintain that this is a very 2007 decision.
I agree.
And it's not a good decision either.
Really not a good choice.
We also see seconds later the Thing and Johnny swap powers, which somehow Johnny's hair isn't affected by. I'm not sure.
This is what I don't understand. The thing is Michael Chiklis does not have any hair, bless him.
Yeah.
So maybe if he did have hair, but it doesn't make any sense because literally every part of the Thing becomes rock-like. So surely he'd have like little spiky pebbly hair.
You would think, yeah, but
No.
apparently not. And it's not lost on me that this is the second film in a row where we find an excuse to show Michael Chiklis not as the Thing after establishing that he is the Thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't very well explained in the previous film, and it's
just random. Hey, look, they can swap powers now.
Instantaneous magic in this one.
Yeah, I've just had another thought actually. When he having hair on Johnny and having him in that latexy awful suit, it would have been way easier to not have the hair. Practically to make him up.
To add the hair as a wig into the...
Exactly.
I got nothing. What's the point?
Like that entire scene. What's the point aside from, hey, comedy? Because look, they've switched now and Ben's a person again. And yeah, it's hilarious.
While we're on comedy, the first film is quite funny.
It is. There are moments that I genuinely found amusing.
I would argue that's not the case with this film.
No. The moments I find funny are not meant to be funny. They are when I'm just laughing at the general production values or the absolute ridiculousness of what I'm seeing. It's, I'm laughing during several of the big set pieces because it's just that stupid, rather than laughing at, stuff that's meant to be laughed at because it's a joke, people. Yeah.
Speaking of things that aren't meant to be funny.
Yeah.
So at the end of the first film, Victor Von Doom is shipped back to his mansion in Latveria.
Yeah.
We see in this film that he's in Latveria, in his mansion, still frozen after his defeat in the previous film, still in the shipping
container. Yeah, they didn't even bother
not in the shipping container, but still in his packaging. So he's mint, his minting box. And as the surfer passes by, for some reason, his mere presence in the atmosphere is enough to wake up Victor Von Doom.
Yeah.
And due to that, for a groundbreaking 2-minute scene, we actually get scarred Victor Von Doom, who has to have all this armor peeled off of him because it's
with like a torch, a welding torch thing,
and it's all the armor has to be prized off of him, so he's all scarred and disfigured and damaged, which is how we see Doom in the comics.
Yep.
However, after a brief little showdown with the Surfer,
he's fine.
He gets blasted by the Surfer's power cosmic, to get technical here.
Yeah.
Which vaporizes him into an ice cave somehow, and then puts him back together again.
Grows skin back.
Yeah, so his whole shtick about the metal kind of being inside him, he's fine now, and
he's just as attractive as he was before.
Yeah.
Except his hair looks really off.
Yeah, sexy Von Doom is back, but the hair's not working for it.
No, I think he went to the same wig place as Jessica Alba. I'm not sure, but it just doesn't look right.
Jessica Alba, I like Jessica Alba as an actor, and these films aren't necessarily the reason for that, I think.
If anything, it's despite these films.
But whilst it was noticeable in the first film that she was wearing, freakishly blue contacts and her hair had been dyed blonde, the fact that it's freakishly blue, noticeable contacts and a blonde wig in this is incredibly distracting, because I don't know, there's something with her skin tone and the color of wig and the color of the contacts that are just, it's all wrong. And
it is.
It's not her fault at all. Jessica Alba can't help that she doesn't look like Sue Storm, but the wig and the contacts don't make her look any more like Sue Storm.
If anything, they make her look like someone who thought one day, you know what, I really want to be Sue Storm, so I'll put on this terrible wig and blue contacts. It begs the question, would people have been so upset if in the second film Sue was brunette? Well, this is it. I don't know, it's this slavish, maybe it's the time, because now they don't have to, I can accept someone who doesn't really look like the person in the comics in the adaptation, because they don't always. You can do the bait as long as they're wearing the right costume, but I feel like they were so slavishly, Sue must be blonde and haired and blue-eyed. But then I think you didn't do any of that with Johnny, because Johnny is...
Yeah, should be extremely blonde.
Yeah, and Chris Evans is not. He infamously wore a hairpiece to play Steve Rogers to give him that dirty blonde look. But you've not done any... This is what's bugging. Like, Chris Evans, you've not touched. Like, he doesn't have to wear a stupid wig. You've not dyed his hair. You've done nothing to make him look more like comic book Johnny Storm. And yet, you've forced Jessica Alba into a blonde wig and blue contacts. Like, what is your logic here?
I feel very much like they needed her to look like comic book Sue, so she needed to be blonde with blue eyes, even though I couldn't give less of a damn what colour Sue Storm's eyes are.
Really doesn't matter to me.
But she also had to be Jessica Alba because it was 2005. And, you know, there were only a handful of actors that they would have wanted for that role. And
they would have wanted to see naked.
Unfortunately. And it's bad because I can see, like, the exact casting choices that were probably put forward, and it was probably Jessica Alba, Scarlett Johansson, Kate Beckinsale, Keira Knightley, all these like mid-2000s, relatively young at the time. And it's like, I can tell exactly who they would have suggested to play Sue Storm, despite the fact that none of them really fitted the description of the character from the comics.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, but they'll have to be blonde. Whereas with Johnny, it's like, yeah, who cares? He's just Johnny, you know?
Yeah.
He's just
Chris
everyone's,
Evans.
he's everyone's top 2 favourite member of the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, it doesn't matter which makes, and I'm sure we will at one point talk about Fantastic, the 2015 film. But
Only a matter of time.
But that's what got me, was there was so much backlash to, oh my God, a black Johnny Storm. And still Sue Storm was stuck in a terrible blonde wig.
Yeah.
What is this about?
I feel like studios need to make a call between, right, do you want the actress that you want, or do you want an actor that is blonde? Which do you want? Actor that you want, or actor that's blonde? Just choose. It's okay. Stop putting people in wigs when they clearly are going to be frustrated about, at least because Jessica Alba dyed her hair for the first film, right?
She did, yeah.
And clearly didn't want to do that again.
Yeah.
So who cares? Just
have a brunette. It's not gonna break continuity because it's 2 years later. And it looked dyed. It looked like dyed blonde hair in the first one. So yeah, 2 years later, she's like, you know what? I've just stopped dyeing my hair. It's fine. Just let it grow.
But would we have had that outrage in 2005 if she'd been brunette? Would people have been flying off the handle like, you know, that's not my Sue Storm. My Sue Storm's blonde with blue eyes and
hashtag not my Sue. I don't know, because we didn't have Twitter in 2005, did we?
No, in
Those
many ways it was an easier time. We didn't have Facebook. Would people have been outraged on MySpace? I need to know.
I know I was getting outraged on MySpace in 2005, but about very different things. So yeah, I don't think there would have been, and I think this is the thing, is if they had been braver then about breaking the mold a little bit in a time where you wouldn't have had all that social media backlash.
Yeah.
Even the basic thing of let Sue Storm be brunette, then, I don't know, audiences would have had far longer to get used to the idea of, hey, a comic book adaptation doesn't have to be exact. We can change things. We don't have to cast these people. We're casting a character, not a look. And maybe the world would be a happier place now because audiences would be used to the fact that, you know, well, all right, so Sue Storm's not blonde. Cool, whatever. they would be used to it. Because back in the day, there would have been no outlet for rage. There wouldn't have been hundreds of clickbait articles like, oh my God, Fantastic Four ruined forever because Sue's got brown hair. And, you know, you didn't have that. So, you know, audience expectation, people may have matured. Probably not, because people are
probably
people.
not, but
probably
still.
not, because, pop culture and gatekeeping and fandom. But maybe life would have been better if they'd have had a brunette Sue Storm.
I am inclined to agree. I think it would have prepared people for, all the outrage they've had in the years since, and it would have probably just disarmed it a little bit if it's like, hey, we can make subtle changes and it's fine. Nobody really cares. It's just comics, man. Get over it.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be. I mean, and the other thing is, look what they did to Galactus in this film. Look what they did to Victor Von Doom in this film. There's plenty of ways to be outraged. I don't give a flying whatever about the main four. Let them look how they look.
So,
I mean,
we will undoubtedly come back to fan outrage about this film later in this podcast.
Oh, yes, we shall.
But I think people are largely outraged about the wrong things. But that's just going to put that on the table. We'll carry on, though.
We'll carry on, yeah.
So this is a sequel, and as we've already acknowledged, as it's a sequel, you have to start doing this weird globe-trotting adventure, don't you? You have to. It's like a legal requirement of the second film. So they start somewhere, and we see a little bit of Japan, and we see a little bit of Egypt, and we see a little bit of, LA and little bits. And basically they discover that your friend and mine, the Silver Surfer, is digging endlessly deep craters to the center of the Earth.
Yeah.
Around the globe, and using maths.
Yeah.
Don't know what maths. They discover
cosmic maths.
Yeah. They discover that the next cosmic crater is going to be in London, near the Thames. Not near the Thames.
In the Thames.
In the Thames. With a view that's going to be great from the London Eye, of course, which starts to fall into this crater, because apparently that's how craters work. I don't.
They affect. I mean, it's a common problem with Ferris wheels that if you're digging a hole near a Ferris wheel, you're going to end up in trouble. It's the basic principle there. It's physics. I'm sure someone's written a paper on it. If you have a wheel of some sort that people travel on and there's a hole nearby, it will break. It's just a correlation.
So, luckily, the Fantastic Four turn up a little bit too late. The crater's already been dug.
The Thames is gone. That's another thing that bugs me. Is like,
hey, the Thames isn't gone until the end.
There's no river. It's all gone in the hole. There's a massive hole.
Which begs the question, surely, that would suggest all the water on Earth has gone into that hole.
Pretty much, yeah.
And destroyed the planet, because it's molten core plus Earth's water, I can only assume, is bad for us.
I've heard, yeah.
Because, for the Thames to be completely dry, surely the water from the Channel then would come into the Thames, and in this kind of endless cycle where the water doesn't stop.
No.
You can't oh man. But
physics.
In the process, the London Eye starts to fall over.
Yeah, because
as we've mentioned, and Reed manages to wrap himself around it for some reason, and Ben's kind of holding it up, and Sue's doing the whole force field thing, and Johnny goes, "Nah, not me. I'm getting that surfer, damn it." And decides to fly not around or above the wheel, but directly at Reed.
Through it, yes.
And in the middle of a rescue attempt where people are going to die, just flies into Reed, switches powers with him, except he doesn't, does he? Reed is on fire for like 10 seconds, but then...
Yeah, and then he's fine, and Johnny's just sort of like a puddle of elastic person on the floor.
I love that I've written in my notes is that how rivers work?
It's not. It's really not.
So the rescue attempt is somehow successful despite Johnny's...
Well, this is it. So
jackassiveness.
yeah. So
Jackassery.
that's it, jackassery. So Ben's holding the wheel up, and then he's just holding the wheel up, and it takes Ben and Reed wrapping himself around like a giant elastic bungee cord band.
And Sue doing that.
And Sue doing that. And then suddenly Reed's out the picture, but it's fine. Ben can like totally just lift it back and put it back. And then he just
rest it back where it started.
Rest it back where it is. Bit of fire, weld it back together. It's fine. Sue's exerted herself because she's got a little bit of blood coming out of her nose, and we know that's what happens when you force field yourself. And
that's right. If you use any kind of power for too long, your nose bleeds.
Your nose bleeds, yeah. And then all's well and all's fine, apart from the fact that there is now no water on Earth in the oceans. That's gone. But what gets me is all that water's rushed in. The boats are fine. The boats are just where they were.
Yeah, it's just they've just reached the bottom of the Thames as if that's the issue. That if all the water, no one's died, no one's been pulled into this endless pit in the middle of London. No casualties. It's like the A-Team. Everyone's fine.
Everyone's okay. Yeah, including the guy he was very nearly in trouble there because he was in the little London. Are they called pods? The things on the London?
I think they're pods. Yeah.
So he's like in the back of the pod and he's scrabbling, and then it's fixed and it's okay, and he can run out and he can hug his family on what is clearly a green screen. It's not. There is so much bad green screen work in that scene. It's like watching The Phantom Menace. It's all over the place. There is so many moments where clearly you're not anywhere near the London Eye. That's a green screen. Yeah. And that family reunion, I'm like, you've just taken a picture of the London Eye there and just pasted it on the background. It's photoshopped. The production values, considering this was $40 million more, where did those $40 million go? I want to know, because it wasn't on the special effects.
Casting 2 actors to do one job.
Pretty much.
It's a whole thing with the London Eye. And I feel like this is the scene that tries hardest to be the bridge scene from the first film.
Yes.
With far less success.
Yeah, and you've got all that bit before when they're in the helicopter, when they're actually flying to the scene, where we have to get the domestic arguments in. So there they are, having a really unprofessional argument, and the army people are just like, what even is this? Yeah, just shush for 5 minutes. And then, so you have this unprofessional fight in the helicopter, and then hey, look, we've saved everybody, so we're actually okay. When we work as a team, we can save people, except we didn't work as a team because Johnny was a jackass.
Which is so it's an interesting kind of progression from, I say interesting in the lightest possible way. So after the thing with the London Eye, Sue and Reed, Christ, I just forgot who he. So Sue and Reed go with the army guys to have a chat about what comes next. Yeah. Which is the official reintroduction of Sexy Von Doom.
Yes. All new, all different.
So Julian McMahon returns, and this is the part of the film they paid him to be in, and not just someone else that can cover in scarred prosthetics. And he basically goes, I have a plan. And his plan is, you get the surfer off the board, man, because I videoed him blasting me through a wall, and I know that the problem here is that the power comes from the board because I videoed it. It's like, and your video it can scan everything. It's a video camera, man. Get over yourself.
I have so many questions about him even doing that. So, where was the video camera? Because that was not in the wide shot of that scene.
No.
I don't know if it was like a little drone. I don't know, maybe. But the other thing is there's clearly audio on that video, because you hear the surfer go, all that you know is at an end, blast you into snowdrift. But immediately prior to that moment, Von Doom's like, so you want to team up? We could take over the world. And I'm like, so did Victor edit the audio out prior to that bit? Or it's a very small clip. And like you say, so the power comes up for his boards. How do you know this? If you literally just have those seconds of all that you know is at an end, blast. That's not really telling you much. Or did he in fact sort of just edit out the audio prior to that, and it just looks like he's standing staring at the surfer for like a really long time?
It's a good question, and I feel like the more likely answer is plot holes.
Through to the center of the earth. That's how plot holes go.
Because I don't think they ever considered that, and because they only just show us that last little bit and just go, "This is fine. This is great." Yeah, it is real lazy. I'm not gonna lie. And from there, we basically see that Reed and Victor start working on devices to separate the surfer from his board.
Yeah.
Or more accurately, Reed works on that device, which appears to be just a bunch of glass spheres on tripods.
Pretty much, with a thing that you stick in the top. Because tachyons are magic.
Yeah, he's going to use a tachyon pulse, which... I mean, okay, suspension of disbelief is firmly locked in, but let's just acknowledge that tachyons are purely theoretical particles.
They exist in Star Trek, therefore they must be real.
They exist anytime someone wants to time travel or do something in space.
Yeah.
But 90% of the time, they're like, not real. By 90%, I mean all of the time.
All of the time, yeah.
There's no proof they exist. Unless you're Reed Richards or Star Trek, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not really explained what that means or how it will work, but Victor and Reed very much agree that it will work.
Yeah.
And while Reed works on his tachyons,
yeah.
We see that Victor is actually working on just a little wrist-mounted LED system.
Yeah.
That looks like a morpher from the like Power Rangers. I think it was Lost Galaxy kind of era. Yeah. And that's his plan. He is going to use his little Power Rangers morpher to steal the board somehow once it's off the surfer, or the surfer is off the board, accurately.
I mean, there are so many questions with that. Like, how does he know what will control essentially a cosmic surfboard?
Because he has a video of surfboard.
He has a 2-second video where some power comes up from the surfboard and is fired at him by the Silver Surfer. And obviously that gives you the schematics for a very complicated control system. Clearly.
Yes.
I mean, I know he's meant to be a really clever scientific genius, but there's genius and then there's whatever the hell that is, because that's a level beyond. Like Reed, who is who boasts that he's, like the cleverest boy in school, basically. He can only come up with tachyon pulse to separate from board. Like, Reed the genius doesn't come up with like, well, what do we do after that? Like, we separate everyone. What happens next? Reed doesn't think of that. Victor's like, it's all right. I'll make something for myself so I can control the board.
Pretty much, yeah. He just leaves Reed to his tachyon pulse and leaves essentially to dick around in a spare room.
Yeah. Spare
rooms that I must acknowledge are definitely the same set as the Baxter Building.
Yeah, clearly they are. Yeah.
Despite
we've just changed the lighting so you don't notice. It's totally in Europe. It's totally Europe, people, because the lights are lower in Europe.
That's true. Very true. And they basically somehow, please tell me if you know, somehow figure out where the surfer's going to go next.
I assume because of the maths.
Oh yeah, the cosmic maths.
The cosmic maths. So the last hole was in the Thames. So obviously the next hole will be in the Black Forest in Germany, because those two things are very similar.
Sure. Why the hell not? So yeah, they set off to the Black Forest and start setting up these tachyon baubles.
Yes. Globes.
Yeah. Tachyon globes with the intention of separating the surfer from his board.
So.
In quite a weird scene, though, that there's no call for, stop me if I'm wrong, but they arrive with the army and with Victor and the whole, shebang. And General Hager, Captain Holt, you and me, says, this is my show. I'm the quarterback and you're the rest of my team, because I guess quarterbacks run American football. I don't know. I don't really know American football. I didn't think quarterbacks were in charge, but whatever.
I didn't think so. I thought they were just the ones they ran with the ball. That's
right. That was my understanding.
Yeah.
If anyone in America is listening at the moment, I just want you to know that literally years and years of quarterbacks being featured in American television has still not been informative about what the game of American football involves.
No. There's a lot of men in padding and helmets, and they run at each other, and it takes
forever. The quarterback's definitely important.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can probably guess and speculate at some of the other positions in the team, but American TV has never explained the game. They've just assumed everybody knows.
Yeah.
And I'm going to spoil it. There are definitely people in America that do not know.
Yes.
Just like there are people in England that don't understand football.
Yeah.
They
exist.
So, problems with the NFL aside, General Hagel, lays down the law that you're going to do what he says, and Reed calls him out on it in what should be like this kind of badass nerd moment where he pulls rank and he's like, I was a good little nerd and I know all the things and I do all the stuff and you're going to do what I say. But he kind of strips it down from being this badass Reed Richards moment by going, and I'm engaged to the hottest girl in the world. And it's like, that's not really significant to what's going on in this plot here, Reed. And that kind of insulting to Sue. And
it's very insulting to Sue. It's like, her entire value is she's the hot chick. It's not like, and I'm engaged to a brilliant woman who, and we work, and she has helped me come up with this, no credit to her. She's hot, dude. That's literally her.
Yeah. And it's just like, and Johnny and Ben are also here.
Yeah.
And it kind of starts like it's going to be this badass Reed standing up for himself moment, and then declines to, oh God, Reed, shut up, man. You're
making the side look bad. Get off my side.
This is probably the best moment to segue into this. At the start of the first film, Sue Storm was a scientist.
She was in charge of scheduling shuttles also.
Amongst other things, she was the chief something about something else.
Yes, genetics and...
geneticist or something like that?
Yeah, she was that word.
And yet in this film, Sue basically seems to know nothing about science.
She props up Reed, but hey, she wears glasses, so she's smart. She wears glasses, And
I can't help but feel like Sue, through both of these films, is a character that they make whatever they need her to be.
Yeah. And
what they needed her to be in this film was not in this film.
Yes.
So
no. They want her to be the emotional, and it doesn't work, and we'll probably get into why it doesn't work, but that whole connection she has with the Silver Surfer, she's the reason that he suddenly changes his mind and becomes a good guy and all that, because of this emotional connection. But then I'm like, but what you actually did was, hey, she reminds him of his wife. And I'm like, so... Not really. You want her to have this emotional connection and this emotional core, and to be the one who's able to talk him round and, tell him to help our world and all that. But the only reason that he's listening to her is, hey, because she's hot like his wife. I mean, that's the subject involved here. It doesn't help.
I think what makes that, and we'll get onto that whole, hey, you remind me of my wife thing, but Johnny
Yeah.
has a thing with the surfer. He is nearly murdered by the surfer, but survives because of luck. He pursues the surfer and crashes into Reed in London. He intrinsically, that's right,
intrinsically, big words,
makes the most sense to have a connection to the surfer.
Yes, he does.
Because he's the only one who's interacted with the surfer.
Yeah. That's one of the many plot threads that doesn't get resolved.
Doesn't get threaded.
No, it doesn't get. I mean, they have that bit at the end, but it doesn't. Like you say, that there is a connection made really early on. Like the first character to interact with the surfer as a surfer is Johnny when they have that spectacular. Let's have a really exciting chase through the streets and tunnels of Manhattan and such. And that's really interesting. And they're the ones that sort of looked at each other. They've stared each other in the eye.
Yeah.
And yet you completely drop that ball in favour of, hey, Johnny's got a crush on that army lady.
Oh, do not get me started on that army lady with the crush.
She could please cut her out of this entire film because there is literally no point to her existence in this film. But yeah, so you could have had something really interesting with Johnny and the surfer, and no. I assume because it's 2007. I mean, we're in 2020 now, and I don't think it would happen now, but it's like, no, we have to go to the common denominator that unites all human beings, which is heterosexuality. And
this is correct, yes.
That's where we're going with it. And it's like, yeah, because heaven forbid that, you know, there might be an emotional connection between a guy and the guy who tried to kill him. You know, people might read into that or something. How tragic. No, dead wife.
That's right. or not dead wife.
She's not
very
dead.
Clear.
It's not clear. It's not clear at all.
So we're in the woods.
We're in the woods. We've gone into the woods.
And in this car crash of a scene,
it's awful.
Reed stands up for himself, kind of, sort of, maybe not very well, and somehow, gets to go and set up his tachyon pulsers.
Yeah.
Sue's setting up hers, the final one, obviously. The surfer rocks up, doing some sweet tree bending, kind of.
He's actually a tree bender. They didn't mention that in Avatar, but there were tree benders.
There were tree benders. And he comes rocking up, and she's all like, "Oh man." It's kind of, you know what it reminds me of? You know that bit in Ghostbusters where Venkman is like, "Ray, he's here, Ray."
Yes. Yeah.
And then Slimer gets him. It's that kind of vibe where it's like, Reed, he's here, Reed.
He's here.
He's looking right at me.
Yeah.
And, rather than getting slimed by the Silver Surfer, oh, that's an unpleasant image.
That is an
I'm
image.
so sorry. He basically, has a bit of a chat with her.
Yeah.
of no real consequence.
And it's never answered why he just decides to chat to her.
No.
Like you tried to kill her brother. I mean, admittedly, he was chasing you, but dude, you were outrunning him. You were completely outrunning him. All you had to do was go into space. He can't follow you into space. But yeah, why you chat to, and also why is Sue the one that's like, she's the last one to get her tachyon pulse generator? Because she's the girl, isn't it? It's because she's the girl. Like Ben has
really,
that.
It should be Ben who has giant rock fingers.
Exactly. He's not very dexterous. And also he gets interrupted by a bear. A bear that doesn't... a bear that doesn't exist in the Black Forest, point of fact, because there aren't any bears in the Black Forest, apart from that one called Bruno, who's in the news many years ago. And also there are no grizzly bears. That's clearly not a European brown bear. So anyway, he gets interrupted by a North American grizzly bear in woods that don't have any. And you would have thought that would distract him and he wouldn't have done his tachyon thing. But no, it's Sue who gets distracted by... I assume she gets distracted because he's a hot dude on a surfboard. That's what I get from that.
Don't
scene.
we all?
Yeah,
I just want to point out that I think people thought we were going to be outraged about Galactus, and I think the real outrage here is that it's the wrong kind of bear in Germany.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's my level. We'll get on to Galactus, but there's so much more to be outraged about, like Sue's blonde wig and the fact that Silver Surfer just rocks up and chats to her and stares at her.
Now,
And it would have made so much more sense to have that be. The more I think about it now, the more I think it would have made so much more sense for it to be Johnny, because
yeah, it just makes good
it
sense.
just makes good sense.
Um,
Damn you,
I-
Tim Story.
I'm still not going to give it away yet, but even now, the grizzly bear, the blonde wig, neither of these are my visual choice that upsets me the most. So
They're not there yet.
it's, don't get me wrong, it's a constant thing throughout the film, and that makes it worse. But so the army decide that because the tachyons aren't ready and the Surfer's there, let's just fire some rockets at him.
Yeah.
Which obviously goes horribly, and he eventually gets detached from his board.
Yeah.
As Sue decides to ignore the chat they've just had and slam that tachyon pulse.
It's
Ooh.
like so you made this, you had Sue make this connection with him and talk to him and all the rest of it, and then she just turns around and blasts him with a tachyon pulse. It's like, and he's still gonna trust her, is he? Okay. Right, fine, bad choice. But if it was Johnny, I could believe it more, because he has that prior, this dude tried to kill me. But Sue, you don't have that. You had a chat with him and you were getting somewhere, and then someone fired a rocket, so you thought, hey, I should try this tachyon thing.
And in firing the tachyon thing, we are treated to a little break in the extremely reflective graphic of the Silver Surfer.
He turns grey.
He turns grey, and it's at this point that you realise just how much the special effects of making someone shiny and silver have not developed between Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
I would say they were better in parts of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I think you could be correct. Especially when there are scenes in this where he morphs into his surfboard and through the surfboard and things like that. And I feel like they are more natural in Judgment Day, which I think might not be a good thing.
I think because they never define what the surfboard's made out of, which I get, but they never define how, in the real world, as someone who's doing the visual effects, they haven't defined how that reacts as a real world substance. Whereas in Terminator 2, we know it's a metal, and we know that it's a metal that morphs, so it has rules. So when we see it do things, it's working on internal physics of the sort, whereas that's just, well, it's cosmic, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. When it's a metal and we know that it's a liquid metal and that's how it behaves, it's got this whole fluid dynamics kind of backbone. When it's weird space stuff, it's kind of left vague enough that no one actually does the work.
Yeah.
And in being separated and being more grey.
Yeah. It just goes so dull. It's like silver that no one's polished for ages. I just feel like if you got some good silver polish on him, he'd be fine. You could
buff that right out.
Buff that up, yeah. You go silvery. He just looks like he's been oxidized.
So after that, everybody is held prisoner by the army. The fantastic.
In Siberia. This is another point of annoyance. Siberia.
Despite being the US military.
Yes. Apparently, they have a base in Siberia that the Russian government's totally cool with them bringing an alien and an alien surfboard and 4 superpowered people to. That's cool. Because it even says in big letters Siberia. And I'm like, look, there are European countries that have cold places that might be a little bit more friendly and happy for the US to actually do this. But no, Siberia, which is in Russia, which traditionally does not enjoy Americans messing about with aliens on its soil. Maybe that's just me.
I think what makes this worse is, based on everything we've been told in the previous 2 films, how
are we not in Latveria?
Yeah, how was the hole not in Latveria? How was the forest not in Latveria? And you can have whatever kind of bear Victor Von Doom decides is there.
It would be a cyborg bear, obviously.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But for just logistical ease of saying whatever you want and no one being able to do what we're doing right now, why not just put it all in Latveria at this point?
Yeah.
Because if you're in Central Europe edging towards Eastern Europe, you're in Doom territory.
Yeah, you are. You're right there. Yeah.
So I don't know.
There's a missed opportunity. And that would then make more sense for him, like, having the surfboard, or, you know, hey guys, why don't we go to my special facilities just over the hill there in Latveria? Let's go there. And then I can more easily steal things.
Yeah, that would scan a lot better for who Victor Von Doom is.
Yeah.
But instead, he's just going to murder the...
Yeah.
Just going to murder some of the army to steal a surfboard while Sue Storm has a chat with the surfer while the rest of the Fantastic Four are locked in a room trying to get some DVDs as a distraction.
There is a lot. There is so much to unpack in just the very... So first of all, so they distract the guard and say, we want some DVDs. But they're on camera. So does the camera not pick up Sue Storm going invisible? Does the camera not pick up the fact that I can now only see 3 members of what is traditionally known as the Fantastic Four? There's only 3 of them. And yet, is anyone even monitoring the feed from that camera? Apparently not, because no one seems to notice. And then somehow she manages to sneak in, because handily they're leaving the Silver Surfer after the... And also Torture, really. They're the bad guys because Torture. And then... he basically does an impression of a Teletubby and shows.
I'm glad you got to that before I said it because it was going to kill me.
Yeah. It's my mum that pointed out. She said, oh, look, he's like a Teletubby. He's basically showing this is Galactus on his... And, I mean, what powers does he have without the surfboard? Apparently he does have them because he can, you know, show you a little film on his stomach. So he does have some powers outside of the surfboard, none that would be practical to use for an escape, but hey, I can show you some images. It's so weird. And then apparently he trusts her even though she blatantly betrayed him earlier when they were having a nice chat,
because she looks like his wife.
Yeah, but
apparently.
It's like you could have like loosened his bonds. You could have like
done anything,
done something practical to prove to him that, you know, you're not on the same team as the people who've imprisoned him and tried to torture him, but you don't bother. And also, how did you get in? Did you walk through the wall, Sue? Did you walk through the wall?
Also, we see in this that she can kind of project onto a wall that piece of wall is invisible.
Yeah.
Which I don't feel like we ever see any evidence of before or after this.
No, we don't.
One thing that bothered me as well, whilst Silver Surfer is kind of doing his, you know, Teletubby act and showing, you know, this presentation slideshow, what you want of how he's got to this point, and you know, I'm a bit disappointed we don't get like the record scratch, you know, freeze frame. Wow, I know what you're thinking. How did I get here? Yes, he does his full backstory. And while he's explaining Galactus came to my planet and I agreed to be his herald, because if I was his herald, he wouldn't eat my planet, but I wouldn't be on my planet. I'd be a Silver Surfer, apparently. He keeps going back and forth on if Galactus is an it or a he. Yeah,
he doesn't... It doesn't... Yeah... There's very little, and the thing is he does his backstory, but he never explains like A, why Galactus needs a herald.
Yep.
B, did he have a herald before the Silver Surfer? Because presumably he found the Silver Surfer's home planet somehow. Did he just rock up one day and go, you know what? I'm bored of having to seek out these planets to come and suck the life out of. What I need is someone to do it for me. Do you want the job? And I'll save you. All right, then. Yeah, here, have a cool surfboard. So none of it. We get just enough exposition for Galactus, Herald, Silver Surfer, planet, but no actual logic as to how that relationship even works.
No.
And he does seem... It is unclear whether Galactus is even sentient. It's like half the time he's referring to Galactus as like almost this sort of beast that just comes along and sucks the life out of things. And then other times almost like a godlike being that comes along and it's like, so what is Galactus aside from a space cloud? Because I can forgive the space cloud slightly if there was more logic as to, we got an impression of what Galactus is as a being. Is it an it, a he? Does it think? Does it not? Is it sentient? Is it not? What thought processes does Galactus operate on? Because we never hear Galactus speak.
No, and I think that's part of the problem when Galactus does appear is it's not that Galactus is a cloud. It's not that, it's not a traditional viewing of Galactus.
I mean, it's
the
very
Devourer.
difficult. Yeah, it's very difficult to have a giant man in a funny hat. It's very difficult to have that.
But what I think makes it very difficult is how undefined even the concept of Galactus is. Yeah. The fact that even his herald seems to just be like, oh, I don't really know, man. It's just, it's kind of this thing. Sometimes he's an it, sometimes he's a he. Sometimes he's a purple guy in a chair. Sometimes he's a cosmic cloud. Oh my God, I'm about to make a second Ghostbusters reference. That Galactus can come in many forms,
Yes.
Someone has to choose the form Galactus takes. So basically, there's quite a lot of comparisons between Gozer the Destroyer and Galactus the Devourer.
And yet, I feel like Gozer is better defined as a character, which is slightly worrying.
Despite the fact that, Ghostbusters and Gozer the Destroyer is this vague, almost nonsensical concept, makes more sense to me than Galactus does in this.
Yes. That is where we are with that.
No idea how to feel.
No.
So... God, there's still loads.
There's still loads to complain about.
So, Victor Von Doom steals the surfboard.
Yes, with his magic Power Rangers wrist thingy, yeah.
Yeah, and vaporizes Captain Holt. Sorry, General Hager.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is I looked this up, this is a PG. That's a pretty brutal death for a PG film.
Yeah, right?
I mean, he literally his limbs get, bits of him fly out. It's quite horrendous.
Shatters into pieces, essentially.
Yeah. And then later on, we see the remains of his corpse still frozen in place. Like when they come in and they're like, oh no, Victor's stolen the surfboard. And oh no, there's General Hager. What's left of him? And it lingers on that shot for a while. I'm like, this is a PG.
Yeah,
okay,
right.
Then.
I'm not sure about that.
No.
So it's at this point where a film that has already been incredibly indecisive about its main plot is essentially hijacked by Victor Von Doom.
Yes.
A character that hasn't appeared in most of the film.
No.
His appearances have been fleeting and often uninformed.
Yeah. Here he is wearing a cloak. Here he is looking ominous, wearing a cloak. Here he is in the shadows, wearing a cloak. Yeah. There's not a lot to say about his previous appearances.
And he... Oh, God, I just don't even know how to describe this. So... he decides that, what does he decide? He's going to team up with Galactus? He's just going to run roughshod with his surfboard?
He's going to use the surfboard to take over the world
that's about to end.
That he's been told by numerous people that the world's going to end. And it's like, yeah, still, I want to take over the world.
So, and the Silver Surfer, who has now been revealed to be Norrin Rad.
I do love that name.
Such a good name. Lets us know that, in reality, we've only got a few hours.
Yeah. So you should spend it with the ones you love.
But instead, because Victor loves nothing more than he loves his omnipotent magic board that he's just come into possession of, he decides to just, do some damage.
Yeah, I'm just gonna run roughshod over this planet and, hey, look, let's have a tour of China.
Yeah, inexplicably sets off to the Great Wall of China. And it's at this point where, fortuitously, we find out that earlier in the film, very much as a tie-in to that flight we see the Fantastic Four on, Reed has actually been developing the Fantastic Car.
Yay!
Now, for those of you at home who might not know...
what sad lives you've led up to this point.
The Fantasticar is essentially this kind of 4-seater nightmare vehicle that can fly and can also split up into 4 individual modules that can be piloted independently somehow.
It's kind of like the opposite of Power Rangers.
Yes. In every regard. And it's never really explained why the Fantastic Four would need this vehicle. And for some reason, it has a Dodge engine in it in this, in a strange bit of product placement that they could never follow through on.
It's the weirdest product placement I've seen in many a film.
And naturally, in that kind of classic comic book sense, Reed manages to activate this from Siberia, and it gets to them near instantaneously from the Baxter Building in New York City.
Yeah.
Despite that being 12-hour flight, maybe?
Yes. Oh, yeah, easily.
Although, of course, if you've not got any passengers, you can go way faster, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, planes could fly around the world in seconds if there was no one on them.
That's right. All that extra weight and needing to keep the people inside alive.
Yeah, none of that.
So Reed summons up the Fantasticar. Obviously, Johnny doesn't need it because he can fly, so there's space for the surfer.
Which is handy that suddenly his powers work relatedly. Yeah.
As if there was never a problem. And they go to the Great Wall of China to show down against... Victor Von Doom.
And a surfboard.
And the surfboard, because he can fly now, obviously. And they kind of, tear it up all over China for some reason, culminating in a fight on the streets of China in an unnamed city, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Where Victor produces a kind of cosmic spear that he throws at the surfer, and Sue Storm sacrifices herself to save the surfer and gets speared, which then disappears in the next scene. Yeah,
it's almost like she makes it disappear, but I'm like, she doesn't have the power to actually destroy matter, as far as I'm aware. Like, there's that whole bit about
it looks like it goes invisible.
Yeah. So it's like that spot on her forehead way back during the wedding attempt that we see, and she stares in the mirror and it disappears. It's still there because she's like, I've just got to concentrate on that area now for the next 12 hours. And I'm like, so is that what she's done with the spike? Is the spike still in there? What's going on? So if the spike's still in there, she's just going to be dead. and it's just going to be awkward, and Reed's not going to be able to hold her like that because there's a spike in the way. Might be invisible, but it's still there. And yet, mysteriously, what would have made more sense was if Reed had sort of ripped it out. And I know PG film, but
I assume that's the thing, that we can't show the blood, so we can't have her stabbed, so it has to not be there. But visually, it's bizarre because it looks like she turns it invisible,
and it's still there.
She does try and we should have mentioned this, but she does try and stop the spear with a force field, but it can go through the force field, which we see earlier as she throws up a force field in the Black Forest, and the surfer just kind of comes through it anyway, because ain't no stopping Norrin Radd. And so anything charged with the power cosmic of the surfboard can pass through force fields, apparently, I guess. And
that's the thing. And she should have remembered that from earlier, but she doesn't.
There we go. And so she dies to save Norrin Radd, and Johnny suggests that, hey, if you give me all of your powers, I think I can stop Doom. We've stopped Doom before. I've fought the surfer, yada yada yada. So he touches Ben, and he gets rock hands, and he touches Reed, so he's stretchy, and his fire powers are fine. And I assume he has invisibility, but I can't remember. He does.
Because he sneaks up on Von Doom to start with.
Yeah.
So, and then it's like Hood, he's like, surprise, and then clobbering time, and look at the terrible special effects of trying to combine all the Fantastic Force powers in one person.
So, as we mentioned briefly earlier, he kind of takes on this Super Skrull essence.
Pretty much,
the fire and the stretching and the invisibility and the rock hands, and goes toe-to-toe with Victor for not that long in reality, because there's not that much film left.
No, we've got to race towards the climax. There's an ominous cloud on the horizon called Galactus. He's on his way. We've got to wrap this stuff up with Victor.
So they, have their scuffle.
Yeah, it's not really a fight, is it? It is ridiculous.
It's the second time that Victor Von Doom kind of looks like an idiot, despite being a genius with superpowers.
Yeah.
He just kind of takes a bit of a beating. The surfer manages to reclaim his board.
Victor falls into the sea.
Yeah, Victor gets knocked into the sea, never to be heard from again. And the surfer, and this is a real issue, brings Sue Storm back to life.
Oh, yes. There is so much wrong with that. I mean, so she dies. She's actually dead. So what he's essentially doing is making her a zombie, is what I'm going for. She's clearly dead. He brings her back to life somehow by making himself less shiny.
This is correct.
Because that's how cosmic powers work.
Yeah, he just has some spots he needs to buff up again, but
yeah, they'll be fine. It doesn't make, and the thing is Sue doing that heroic sacrifice didn't make sense. It was entirely pointless.
Yeah, if you then bring her back from the dead, her heroic sacrifice is pointless.
There is no
trivial, and
I mean, if you were going to have a showdown with Victor anyway, so why not have them try and fight Victor and fail, and then a metaphor for the fact they've been at each other's throats throughout most of this film, and that would be like, no, we need to work together. Remember how we defeated him before with, the fire hydrant and stuff? We did it by all working together, and then maybe we do agree to give Johnny all the powers, and that, it's not great, but it's way better than what we got, which was like, Sue's dying. Oh dear.
It feels like more budget but less time ultimately led to them just bailing on this end sequence. So the fight doesn't really flow correctly, and it kind of begs the question, like, how many members of the Fantastic Four actually needed to be in this film, because
Yeah,
it's not 4,
it's not.
and especially like this end fight, Reed and Ben contribute nothing other than giving Johnny their powers.
Hey, Ben gets into a crane and he
does.
swings a crane at Von
Out of
Doom
Victor, yeah.
and sends him to the sea. Reed does absolutely nothing apart from, cry over Sue dying.
Which, don't get me wrong, I understand, and it's one of the few things that suggests Reed is a human that loves Sue Storm.
It's the only time I actually believe he does, because he's so awful to her I mean, to be fair, she's awful to other people, but maybe that's because, her fiance's a dick. He just blanks on her constantly. Like that whole bit about when he gets the idea about the tachyon pulse, she's giving him a massage, she's being supportive. I have my own issues about the fact that she's reduced to the massaging girlfriend scenario. And then he's like, oh yeah, pulse, thanks very much, bye. And it's just like, oh, right. So here she was trying to do something nice for you. And you're like, yeah, don't need you now. I've got an idea. I'm off to do the science. Bye. It's one of the few times when she's actually dying / dead that you think, oh, yeah, he does actually care about Sue. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought?
Yeah, and I just think there are so many issues with the relationship between the 4 members of the Fantastic Four. Reed and Sue in particular is like the least informed, understandable relationship. We see that increasingly through these films that Ben and Johnny are friends, really, and
yeah, they have that whole sequence in the pub where Johnny sets the dartboard on fire. And I love that conversation.
That might be the best scene in this film. And that's not a good sign. No,
but I would agree. Because there's actually some genuine... Because he's like, I want what you have with Alicia. But not what you have with Alicia, because that's your girlfriend. And bless him, he's actually trying to say something that's actually vaguely deeply emotional
something
for
of
Johnny.
Value. And we also get the casual joke that the Thing is drinking out of a vase.
Yes.
And things like that it's like it adds very little to the film, but it adds a lot to them as essentially brothers. And I feel like that's a real disappointment, and it's a disappointment we had with the first film, that we could get so much more from them as friends.
Yeah, because the little glimpses you get really do show up the terribleness of Reed and Sue's relations with literally every other person.
Yes.
It's like you're actually trying. You've got this really lovely little brotherly, friendly relationship between Ben and Johnny that you're kind of actually doing something with this film, albeit very, very briefly. But all it does is highlight how terrible everything else is.
Yes, and I think it just shows how offset the kind of human elements of the characters are.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we've still not talked about the end of the film.
No, we've been putting it off, but it happens.
So after reviving Sue Storm and saying to Reed, I just hope you can enjoy the moments with her, the blah, blah, blah.
Treasure, it's something like treasure each moment with her or something that makes you puke, yeah.
And then the Silver Surfer takes off into the sky to throw down with I was going to say throw down with Elastica then. Takes on one of the Britpop big acts in a fight to the death. Now he flies off to take on Galactus and basically defies all logic, because he flies into the heart of this angry, ominous storm cloud, which is the form of Galactus. And don't get me wrong, we get some like shadowy glimpses that are like, ooh, could that be a hand? Is that the whole crown of Galactus? Oh, was sweet. And then he, without saying a word, without really having a chat or any dialogue, as we've mentioned, there's no vocal presence, even though you've hired Lawrence Fishburne. Come on.
Yeah.
Make him do something here that would have made sense rather than voicing Silver Surfer, who's got a perfectly good voice.
Yeah.
Silver Surfer kind of goes all, anime style attack.
Yes.
And, balls up, crosses his arms, and explodes, which completely destroys, dissipates, whatever, Galactus.
Yeah.
Which begs the question, did Galactus make the Silver Surfer stronger than him? And if so,
wow. How and why? Yes. That's what it begs the question. How did he destroy Galactus if Galactus is like his master? It's like, so I'm going to have this slave, but I'm going to give him superpowers, and I'm going to give him a magic cosmic weapon, and I'm going to give him the capability to kill me at any point. I just hope that he never goes to a planet and finds a woman who reminds him of his wife, who's going to talk him into turning against me. I really hope that never happens. And then, whoops, it did.
It's such a strange moment, and I didn't remember that that's how it goes down. I didn't remember that he destroys Galactus.
Yeah.
And it kind of undermines everything we know about Galactus from a comic book perspective.
My favourite storyline involving Galactus is still the one where Squirrel Girl beats him. But she does that with brains, not brawn. But yeah, it just completely throws us off. What was Galactus? We don't know. Was he in fact just a giant cloud? And did all he had to do all along was just explode the cloud, and then all was well? Dunno. I don't know.
There's just no answers here, and just so many questions. And
there's still all those massive holes in the planet.
Yeah, never dealt with. We kind of see that Silver Surfer in the post-credits scene is alive and kind of drifting in space.
Yeah.
Somehow, despite imploding to.
Yes. How does that work? Don't know.
We also flash back to Earth, where the Fantastic Four decide that it's the perfect time for Reed and Sue to get married, and they're going to get married in generic Asia, because despite the fact that we're in a city in China, they decide to get married and are suddenly surrounded in quite clearly like a Japanese garden, surrounded by women in kind of full geisha
outfits.
And there's also an implication here that the Fantastic Four aren't famous outside of the United States.
That is the implication, yeah. I don't know where these locals came from. And what I did notice at the end is there's a bunch of little girls wearing generic Asian, probably Japanese kimonos, but it's never made clear. And one of them's white.
Huh. I hadn't noticed that. Probably because I was already blinded by the kind of casual racism of.
I mean, yeah, to be fair, I was like, and I'm pretty sure I was like, is that Korean national dress over there? But yeah, no, I did notice that one of the little girls at the end was white. Some of them were Asian, generic Asian, because if you're gonna do cultural appropriation, you just pick a general area, don't you? You just like Asian.
You do. You just choose a continent traditionally, rather than
let's. And I mean, there's a lot that insults me about that. I mean, I've nothing against them. Right, let's just get married. We've tried the whole big party thing, and a helicopter nearly crashed and killed Ben's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Let's move on from that. Let's do a wedding. But why does it have to be Asian themed randomly? In Japanese themed when you're clearly in China. Why not just, hey, we've flown the priest over, do it in the wreckage of the city? It doesn't really matter at this point, does it?
Yeah, it's.
Have you wear your Fantastic Four uniforms? I don't know anything, but what the hell you did at the end there is just like, no, it's so wrong.
It's. To call it problematic would be an understatement, I think.
It would, yeah.
And I still have questions.
Go on.
And it's not necessarily to do with that. So we've covered the plot. This is a long podcast, and I respect anyone who's made it this deep.
Thank you, you brave souls.
But there are plot points in this film that stop as quickly as they start. So there's things like Fantastic Four fashion, once again. Fantastic fashion.
Fantastic fashion, yep.
Johnny, at the start of the film, has this kind of Booster Gold-esque jumpsuit covered in sponsors.
Yeah, where does that go? Because he tries it out as well, because he lands with that on the roof when Reed's doing things he shouldn't be doing with the sensor.
Yeah.
And he's like, don't tell Sue what. And he does have all the logos on it at that point. That's the last time we see it.
Yeah, we only get it in like one or two scenes, and what the hell is the deal with that?
True, yeah.
Alicia, Ben's girlfriend, who can't lie, one of my favourite characters.
Gonna agree with you there. She is, I would say she's my favourite female character in this. There's not much competition because you've got Sue and the army lady. So clearly she's already well up there. But no, she's actually one of the better characters in this film, Alicia. And it disappoints me that she just kind of disappears.
Yeah, after the first, 15, 20 minutes, she's gone.
Yeah.
She gets mentioned, as we've said, in the pub scene, which is probably the best scene. They talk about her.
Yeah.
But she's not there. And as you mentioned, the army lady, Frankie.
I didn't even bother learning her name.
Is at the wedding with Johnny, despite consistently through the film just ignoring Johnny and not being interested. And what the hell is that?
Well, it's like, because she appears at the end, like, General Hager's dead. I nearly called him Captain. Never mind. General Hager's dead. I will get his name right. And she sort of confronts them, and then they're like, we need to save the world. And that's it. That's okay. So you warmed to them because they told you they needed to save the world. Okay. Why? And I mean, her character serves absolutely no purpose. Because Johnny's maturing because his taste in women is now to professional army people as opposed to models. I don't know. But literally, she serves no purpose. Johnny's storyline of maturity could have been done so much better with better characters. Why is she there? Why? She doesn't really speak much. She has some lines when she's telling Johnny off, but for most of the scenes she's in, she's just stood there silently. And it's like, you could have just got a cardboard cutout to do that job.
I don't know. In a film that is starved for more female characters,
it's disappointing that one of those female characters could not be in the film, and you wouldn't see the difference.
Yeah, I think it's really disappointing, and there's a lot to dislike about this film.
Yes. How this has got more, why this is more critically acclaimed, and I use that term very lightly because I'm not sure 11% on Rotten Tomatoes equals critical acclaim, but why this was seen as a slightly better film by some critics on the internet, I can't figure out for the life of me.
No, I think you have to have very different standards to think this is better than the first film.
Yeah.
And while I think both films are imperfect in a whole bunch of ways, I just feel like, you know what, there's some things to like in here, but not enough, I think.
No, I mean, I like I like Alicia, I like her and Ben's relationship, I like Ben and Johnny's reactions and interactions.
Yeah, and I think Doug Jones
is really good. Why didn't they let him use his own voice?
Just let the man act, god damn it.
He's an actor. Let him act. He was in Oscar-winning films, damn it. So yeah, there is some good stuff, but unfortunately, there's also a lot of questions. And when I spend a lot of time going, but why? But how? But why? I don't enjoy. There's a lot of but why and how in the first film, but I can gloss over that because the ride is fun.
Yes, here it's not particularly fun. I think it's too short, too awkward, too indecisive with the plot. And
it doesn't know what it wants to be. Is it a Fantastic Four family plot? Is it about marriage and growing up and maturing? Is it about the end of the world? Is it about a cool new villain? Is it about shoehorning Victor Von Doom as a villain into
it's
here?
Definitely about that.
Is it about a giant space cloud? Because the Silver Surfer is a good character, played well by Mr. Jones.
But he's not
opportunity. But he's not the focus.
Justified or focused on enough for it to work.
Or have his name in the title, frankly. It should have been Fantastic Four, Return of Victor Von Doom.
Return of Doom. There's a lot to unpack. The cloud.
Yeah.
People hate it. I have it cited to me all the time as that's why this is a bad film. I think that is false. I think if your biggest problem is an ominous cloud, an ominous, angry space cloud, if that is your problem with this film, you've not seen this film. I'm sorry.
No, you've seen the honest trailer for this film.
Yes, and the cloud. Yeah, it's not perfect, and I know the long-standing rumor is that Tim Story had in place the plans for a Silver Surfer film, and he wanted to save the reveal of Galactus for the Silver Surfer film. And you know what? I can respect that decision. You don't want to throw Galactus into the mix of an already messy film just to add to the overall mess. If you know there's going to be another film, and okay, we never got that film, that's unfortunate. And unfortunately, I think this film is the reason we never got that film.
Yeah, in trying to make Fetch happen, you made it fail.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly that. And I don't think the ominous space cloud is in place of Galactus is the problem. I think the fact that Galactus is undefined conceptually is the issue. Tell me what Galactus is, and then we can work backwards to if the cloud's bad or good. But if you don't tell me what Galactus really is, then the cloud is neither here nor there for me.
No.
The biggest visual problem with this film is simple. Okay.
Go on. I'm ready. I'm ready for this. I've been waiting a while for this.
In most scenes, Ben Grimm has prosthetic teeth.
Yes.
He has like these rocky, awkward looking teeth.
Yeah.
But I swear to God,
dentures. I
swear to God, there are a couple of scenes in this film where he doesn't have the prosthetic teeth in, and they show him smiling. And in that moment where he's this big rock dude with these tiny little human teeth, it sends shivers down my spine. I don't know what it is, but there's a couple of scenes where he's not got these fake teeth in, or at least it doesn't look like it, where you can see these creepy human teeth in this big rocky face, and oh man, it makes my skin crawl. I don't know. And
you know, I mean, I noticed the denture teeth quite a lot, but I'm gonna have to go back and see if I can spot his human teeth now. Oh no!
But
I'll watch it on fast forward. It will be fine.
Absolutely horrifying. And if you're upset about the space cloud, let me tell you, you need to take a proper good look at the thing's teeth, because that's what you should be upset about.
That's the real tragedy of this film. No, you'll just see teeth in your. It's the wrong teeth.
So I think that more or less brings us to the end of our Rise of the Silver Surfer deconstruction.
Longer than the film itself, which I think says so much for that film, because if we can deconstruct it in a period of time longer than the film, maybe a film wasn't long enough, guys. Maybe you should have thought about filling in some of those giant plot holes to the earth.
And I think we could have talked about this for a couple of extra days at this point.
Probably could.
I deeply recommend checking out our previous podcast where we discussed the first Fantastic Four film. I will link to that in the description of this here podcast.
Because we did actually enjoy that one more.
Yes, and I think we explain why quite well. Here, this isn't a good film, unfortunately. No. I'm disappointed to say. I think we both thought it would be, but especially, I think we were overly optimistic, perhaps, based on the first one. Yeah,
I thought, because the first one surprised us with how enjoyable it was, and the passage of time and all that, the fact that it needed reevaluating, and we reevaluated it and came out saying, actually, it wasn't that bad. It's probably the best Fantastic Four film. And having seen this one, it's still, the first one is still the best Fantastic Four. It's pulling ahead
quite significantly now.
Yeah, because, the darker, grittier sequel, it was neither darker nor grittier nor... I mean, it was slightly because a guy gets killed in a horrible way.
That's true, yeah.
It didn't improve upon. All the problems that were in the first one are in this one, but amplified. It just didn't... There's a reason why there wasn't a third. And like you say, this film was the reason.
Yeah.
It just wasn't... It wasn't good. I'm really sorry, Silver Surfer. One day you may get... Now you're in the family bosom of Disney. Maybe they'll do something with you. Probably not. But we can hope.
I think in the future we'll undoubtedly discuss the Fantastic Four from 2015. And I think in that episode we should get into our thoughts of what should come in the future of the Fantastic Four in a cinematic fashion.
Yeah.
But that is something we'll have to save for another day.
We can save that, yes.
So
save the build from that for the moment.
For the moment. So thank you for listening. If you've survived this long, I have nothing but respect for anyone who's made it through this, and anyone who's rewatched the film in preparation. I am so sorry. But just know that the biggest problem with this is not the form Galactus takes.
It's the Thing's teeth.
It's the Thing's teeth and the overall horrible sexist overtones and lack of understanding of the human condition.
As a whole, yes.
So, thank you.
Yep.
We have been Angela and Zach, and will continue to be.
Yeah, we will be.
And this has been Bigger Than Capes, and we've not really proved it this week, but remember that comics are bigger than capes.
And sometimes films are bigger than capes, and sometimes they're just awful films.
Bigger than capes.
Give me some outside.
I was looking forward to it, and then I watched it.